Cooled down vibes, from the kick to the snare, and everything in between. Sirius XM, Chill Hop.
I smoke backwoods and Dutchies, you can't touch me. Go in the ashtray, spark the weed up. They see me in the streets, they be like, yo, he nice.
Sirius XM. Chill Hop. Relax your mind.
And today's topic will be financial literacy. And our moderator for the event will be Kendra Larkin, the Senior Account Manager of Global Entertainment Partnerships with Endeavor.
For JSU's Leadership Legacy session. So I'll first invite everybody up before I get into a bigger intro of why we're here and what we're about to do today. So if you'll join me in welcoming our panelists. First up, we have Ralph V. Clark II, Vice President of Commercial Banking Metro at Trustmark National Bank. Welcome, how's it going? Next up, we have Misty Monroe, Associate Vice President of the Division of Business and Finance, right here at Jackson State University. Welcome. Thanks. And last but not least, we've got Donald Hawkins, founder and CEO of Kinley with us. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right, guys, let's get into it. So first and foremost, I want to send a big hello to everyone across the SWAC and the MEAC who are joining us virtually. So glad that we've got everyone here this year. And this speaker series is bringing notable community and industry leaders to Jackson to share their stories, challenges, and successes to help you navigate your journey as you prepare for your future. Our goal today is to focus on areas that are most important in your lives. So today's event will focus on financial literacy, which is a topic of incredible importance to students and the larger HBCU community, and honestly for everyone in the world. It's an area that affects all of us, and we're fortunate to have experts here to help us navigate what can often be seen as an overwhelming landscape. So let me welcome everyone and say thank you again before we kick things off. So I'd like to give you guys just a few minutes to really introduce yourselves, give us a little background on who you are and why you're here today. So I'd like to start us off on this end with Ralph.
Thank you. First, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Ralph Clark. I am a fourth generation Jacksonian. So going back to my great grandfather, have all attended and been alumnus of the Jackson State University. I'm a 15-year banker here in the local area, where I focus in on corporate clients, clients that have revenues of $5 to about $100 million. So once again, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
And I'm Misty Monroe. I'm the Associate Vice President for Business and Finance at the Jackson State University. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so fortunate to be asked to be on this panel today. I started my education at Hines Community College. I was a first generation college graduate, and so when looking at that landscape of how do I get my degree, it was looking at every resource possible, and so Hines Community College afforded me that opportunity to then go on to Mississippi State, majoring in marketing, and I graduated in 2003 and was fortunate and obtained a job in banking, in retail banking as a branch manager. From there, I was a financial advisor for Merrill Lynch, and then went back into banking on the corporate side, and then eventually into commercial real estate, which led me to public service. And the company had a layoff, and so unfortunately lost my job, but then led me to public service, and I started in public service with the PERS, the retirement system, and then went to the Legislative Budget Office and was went to the Treasury Office and was the Chief Investment Officer and the Chief Financial Officer for the Legislative Budget Office. And so that then led me to Jackson State. And so it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, and I look forward to this panel.
Donald Hawkins, CEO of Kinley. I guess I'm the first person that can say I'm not connected to the Jackson State University, but getting jealous. Grew up in a small city called Albany, Georgia, in South Georgia. I actually attended Albany State University, and had a lot of fun there. A lot of things that I learned at the HBCU that I feel is an experience everybody needs. Over the span of my life, I've been able to be involved and have really good mentors and advisors, and family members work really hard. Kind of my backstory is that my father was the first person to integrate his high school in Colquitt, Georgia, and my grandmother on my mother's side grew up as a sharecropper. And because of their hard work, dedication, to me and my family, my sisters, cousins, and I have been able to do amazing things to them. But to us, it's felt easy because of how hard they worked. So now I'm a VC-backed tech entrepreneur, and I run a neobank called Kinley that was created based out of the racial reckoning of 2020. Got sick of seeing what I was seeing, decided I wanted to throw my name in the hat to try to do something to help Black America reclaim our $1.7 trillion in annual economic impact, but also really support Gen Z, because I saw Gen Z as a demographic and a community who really cared about passive wealth building. And some of the conversations I've already had since being here on this panel have already shown that I think that's been validated. Really excited to be here today and to learn from everybody here.
Beautiful. Thank you all for being here. So I want to open it up with the first question. It's a big one. I understand that everyone's definitions will be different, so I'd love for each of you to just share, what does it mean to be financially literate? And I'll start off again. Ralph.
Sure, no problem. Being financially literate is honestly the key to your success of the future. One of the biggest things that we all realize is we don't know everything, but we can know something. And being financially literate just speaks to that. One of the things that I've tried to do over time is educate myself on different financial tools, financial aspects, anything that kind of can progress myself and my family forward for generations. I was blessed. I come from a really, really strong background of family members who are both college educated, who have gone on to very, very successful careers. So it gave me a leg up on a lot of the financial tools that were available to me at a very, very young age. Now, realizing some of that blessing doesn't extend to everybody, one of the things that I've always prided myself on is giving back. So one of the things I want to do is provide opportunities for other African Americans in order to provide the financial tools to access to finances through banking, through investments and everything else, in order to help them progress their lives forward as well. Back to the definition of what being financially literate is. The truth of the matter is I don't really know. And when I say I don't know is you can't really define that. It's what you want to know and what you want to do. Giving the investment in yourself, you want to educate yourself enough to where you learn the different tools that are out there, but you also want to educate yourself enough to where you're not being taken advantage of. So to me, that's kind of both defensive and offensive and what being financially literate is.
I love that.
I look at financial literacy as, your financial health, your financial freedom. We have physical health, we have mental health, and we have financial health. So if you look at your financial health, how you approach your physical health and your mental health, you have, family history with physical health. So okay, maybe grandmother has, diabetes, so I'm not gonna, eat as much sugar. Or, and then as far as mental health, just really having a healthy, being and reaching out to others to really support your mental health. And so financial health is the same, I look at it the same way. It's knowing, where you came from, what mistakes maybe you made financially that you can learn from, maybe your upbringing, maybe, you would like to be, have a different lifestyle than maybe where you came from. And then look at your present, like where you are now. Are you a student? And so if you're a student, that's your job right now. Or if you've graduated, then that's your job. And to really evaluate where you are and understand what your income is, what your expenses are at that point in time, to then plan for the future. And so the future, whatever you're doing now, you have to have your goals set to then work, make a plan, work your plan to reach that next goal. And then you start over again. And it's really a never-ending cycle that you just always strive to increase your financial health over time. And so I feel like, if we approach it in that way, as we approach physical health and mental health, it really kind of simplifies like what is financial literacy and financial health, which leads to financial freedom.
Yeah, and I don't have too much to add to these great comments. I would just say for me, financial literacy is understanding, right? In life, sometimes you need help, right? We go to teachers to help us gain understanding around a lot of different topics. We go to doctors for the same thing related to health, psychologists, psychiatrists for other things that we deal with too. And with financial literacy, our community has largely been blocked from understanding how it works. It goes all the way back to the 1800s and even before that. So for me, it's really all about Black America and just consumers in general getting in the game, right? You got to get involved. If you want to know how money moves, how it works, you're going to have to be proactive, because unfortunately, the way our world is currently set up, that information is not going to be easily provided. There are resources, that want to provide that, but you have to be able to get out there and get it. All about understanding.
In talking about getting in the game, right? Understanding your financial health. I love that comparison, because it seems like it's a mountain, right? There's so much information about finances. You don't even know where to start. Do you start with listening to podcasts, walking into your local bank, going on YouTube, right? So I'd love to hear from you guys. Where do you start? Where should a young person start to begin their journey in becoming financially healthy, wealthy, literate?
I think really, really be honest with yourself. Be aware of what you want in your future. If you want to eat filet mignon every weekend, then search, for a job or a career path that allows you to do so. And in order to do that, know how much you need to save, how much you need to make in order to live the lifestyle that you would like to live. Set those goals and simplify it. And so if you know your wants and you know your needs, then you can back into how much do I need to make, and what type of careers would produce that type of income for the lifestyle that I want for myself. And so, and just simplifying it of, if you're a student and you want to, I encourage everyone, from even a very young age, prior to, college, is it really understand, like if you're working, as a student, you may have, like your job is to be a student, but you also may have a job as, just that you work after, school hours. That's your revenue. Any type of scholarships that you have, that's your revenue. And then your expenditures, of course, really understand, there's so many resources that we have here at Jackson State to really understand what is tuition cost, what do books cost, what do residence halls cost, and then look at those costs over the 4-year period or 5-year period. And know that ahead of time to where you can plan today to be able to then graduate in a good position to where hopefully you don't have as many loans as you thought you may have to get because you planned.
Once upon a time, I feel like there were communities, where it was common for people to go to each other's doors, knock on the doors, ask questions. That's now been transitioned to text messages and emails. But I think one of the easiest things that the students can do is have conversations with people that are where you want to be, right? Very similarly, because I can guarantee you that they did not take a linear path to get there. They made a lot of mistakes along the way, like so many of us have. What ends up happening, and we were having this conversation earlier, every generation, every cohort seems to create the same missteps, same mistakes, and then we reach a certain point in our life and we say, man, you know what, if I was in my 20s or if I was in my teens, here's what I'd do differently. Well, guess what? If you're in your teens or your early 20s, go and find those people to talk to, because they can tell you everything they did wrong. it's easy to fall in love with the glamour of the good side of things, right? Buying the homes, getting the nice cars, the nice watches. But what really helps people get on the path to success is avoiding missteps. And I feel like that's something that is easier for us to do. You know, my father, you know, was a CPA, but because he wasn't provided a lot of financial education in his youth, that didn't trickle down to me and my sisters. So we had to learn online. We had to go to the gurus, which you have to be very careful with. You're on Clubhouse listening to people telling you that you can make $10 million in 10 months. Be careful. You know, I probably wouldn't do that. But having those conversations with people that have been there and done that can help you skip steps. And I think that's just a good value in life in general, right? If you can find out, whenever I have conversations with any of my mentors, the number one question that I always ask is, what do you regret most in life? And the answers you get back from that are powerful, because people typically don't get asked that, but that's how you learn what to avoid.
Just to kind of add, I think the word that he said that really, really touched me was mentor. Actively seek mentorship. One of the biggest things that I've learned is most people don't have a problem earning money, they have a problem keeping it. So finding a budgetary fix in your own personal finances and learning from others' mistakes. One of the biggest things that I've learned is it's not necessarily the mistake that you made initially, it's compounding the mistake with other mistakes. We don't want to multiply our mistakes and end up with financial calamity. So when we're making those decisions, seek mentorship, seek advice, and don't be afraid to ask the questions. Most people will give you the answer. I think one of the things he just said was your biggest regret. We're willing to give that away. But we also need to look at the keys to success as well. What are the biggest keys to your financial success? What's the best investment you made? Was it your home? Was it a stock? Was it a checking account, money market, or whatever tool that's available to you? Listen and find mentorship.
And to double tap on that real quick too, I also think it's equally as important for those that have crossed that threshold to also be just as proactive. If we care about the next generation, it's going to take us just as much as them to reach out. The whole concept of C1B1. It makes no sense for us to sit back and watch another generation go through the same thing that my generation went through, that my mom and dad's generation went through. So the collective, whole that we want to work towards, it works both ways.
I think so many great points here, but sharing what we know is so important. Being able to give back, I wouldn't be able to sit here and have this conversation with you guys had my mother not passed on information on financial literacy, right? It goes both ways. But Ralph, Misty, you guys touched on something that I want to break down a little bit more. So why is creating a budget so important, and how do you stick to it? Because, like Donald's saying, the gurus are out there. You can download a template for a budget, but how do you know it works, and how do you even stick to it with all of the things that you want to accomplish with that money that you're making?
Well, a budget is, I think when most people think of a budget, they think of from a constraining standpoint. In other words, we look at, I would say, the Instagram world today. We're looking at everybody else and trying to determine our happiness based upon what we see that's actually make-believe. When you break it in those confines or in those sensibilities, I mean, just because you have the latest, greatest, or whatever, does not necessarily make you financially prudent. I know plenty of people who are on Instagram looking amazing don't have $1 in their account. So you don't want to, and then two, when you talk about budgeting and how much we make versus how much we spend, we want to stay within our lifestyle. Like, I think over the course of time, you typically have 3 lifestyle changes. One is from when you first graduate from college or high school or get into your career, you upgrade your lifestyle from off your parents' payroll, hopefully. And then the second one is when you get your career job and you start to buy your house, start to plan for your future. And the last one is retirement, trying to sustain that lifestyle throughout the rest of your life. When you look at it from those 3 different aspects, making decisions that are powerful throughout make all the difference in the world. So if you can't budget $5, how am I going to trust you with $1 million? you're just gonna spend it. The second thing is, one of the biggest things that Ralph personally has a problem with is sneakers. I spend way too much money on shoes, but that's because my dad never bought them when I was coming up. Now, I wouldn't put my shoes above my mortgage or shoes above feeding my kids or feeding my family. So you have to make those decisions in order to create a lifestyle that you would like to see. And budgeting is one of the key factors of that.
I too have a shoe problem as well. So, but yes, just a lot of, Ralph said a lot of good things about is make a plan, work the plan, stick to the plan, and you know, how do you stick to the plan? That's difficult because again, budget is automatically you go to what am I not getting? What do I not get to have? What do I not get to buy? And instead of looking at it that way, look at it as, okay, I'm saving today so I can get this tomorrow, or I can retire at this age, you know, later on in life, to where you can continue that financial freedom throughout the different, you know, phases of your life. So planning early, planning now, even if it's the smallest amount, you know, that you can put aside. I know it sounds like in college, it's like I can't put any money aside. I'm barely making it. And yes, that is real. But even just putting $1 aside every week, every little amount does count, and it does add up, and it does make a difference. But as far as sticking to that, I find that, you know, creating personal financial goals for myself, and treating myself when I meet those goals, but, you know, making those goals, you know, achievable, but also difficult enough to where I'm not just treating myself every week. And so to me, that personally has helped me stick to my budget, or, you know, stick to my plan. And you know, whatever that looks like to you, it does kind of, you know, relieve some of that feeling of being limited, when you do reward yourself for actually sticking to your plan.
So there are ways to sort of stick to your budget that you both have really outlined, but if you don't have a bank, if you don't have a bank account, you know, I really kind of want to touch on this because I understand in our community, being unbanked is definitely a challenge that we see within our own people. So Donald, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but I'd love to hear what it means to be unbanked or underbanked, and what can students do about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty significant issue. Right now, over half of Black America is either unbanked or underbanked. That's over 25 million people right now, right? Being unbanked is exactly how it sounds. You don't have a traditional bank account. And right now, a lot of those consumers are using platforms like Cash App, Venmo, as their primary way to transfer money. In fact, Cash App, as an example, started off purely as a peer-to-peer payment solution and ended up adding a debit card because they noticed people kept so much funds on their account. They wanted a way for people to spend. On the underbanked side of things, that's when you look at Black communities and a lot of underserved communities around the country where Black folks typically have to pay more money for free checking accounts. A lot of nasty statistics where there are 39% fewer banks in Black areas, and then also the majority of the banks in Black areas typically charge their customers up to $250 more just to have a free checking account. So what that does is drive people away. You really want to see the disparity also from why people are underbanked is do an assessment in your area of the number of check cashing locations versus traditional banks. You will find that that correlation in a lot of underserved areas is not good, you know, and it makes it easier for people to stay off of those banking systems. The reason that's not a benefit, you know, to those consumers is because they're working in a cashless type of society and they don't have something that they can use to actually scale and build and grow their money. Another one of those examples, you know, I have people, you know, that I grew up with that swear that their savings account is how they're going to retire. Don't know the first thing really about inflation. and inflation is eating up any money that's sitting in the account right now that's not earning interest. So if our community doesn't find a way to wisen up and start to put our money to work, first getting in a traditional, platform that they can look at to scale and grow, it's tough. And the fact that, again, over half of our community today, 2022, soon to be 2023, is underbanked or unbanked is an atrocity.
Those are really powerful statistics. And I think we can all see it and we can all feel it too. So I know that there has to be some sort of shift within our community in becoming financially literate in order to make a change for this generation to generation. We get to break that generational curse. But before I get into breaking the chain and growing, I do want to talk about something that I think is really tactical, and that's credit cards and credit scores. Having a credit card, we talked about this earlier, it's like your first action, you go out and buy some new shoes, because I too am a shoe problem person, and you go out there and you spend the money and you just start racking it up, it feels free, right? So I really want to give our audience a little bit of background and understanding in when it makes sense to apply for a credit card, whether you're bringing in income or not, but when does it start to make sense to start building your credit score? How do you really establish a line of credit and keep yourself in good standing with credit scores?
I guess I'll start with that. I would say you probably need to get your first credit card when you get your first job. When I say not your first real job, establishing credit early is key to your financial future when you're trying to buy a home or make other major purchases. But you also want to make sure that you do it responsibly. Make sure that the interest rates are low on it. I don't believe in secured credit cards, but unsecured credit cards, the interest rates could be as high as 30–40% on the purchases, especially if you take cash off the card. So when you're talking about when to establish credit, to manage your credit and everything else, you don't want to get over your head early. Because one of the things that we were joking about earlier was when I was in school, they used to give you a $500 credit card. They used to pass out flyers around campus and say, hey, you come in, sign this up, mail it off, we'll give you a credit card. And before you know it, you get the card in the mail and you're balling. Then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I have to actually pay this back at like 35%. And then you get like a $2 minimum payment that you're paying every month for the next 15 years. So all of a sudden you're already in debt and don't even realize it. And we're not even talking about student loans when, you see guys getting these $3,000 and $4,000 refund checks and buying cars. So it's all a game in order to keep you and entrap you, in order to keep you limited in your upward mobility in society. So when we're talking about the credit card in particular, I would say, like I said, when you get your first real job, start off by like putting a little gas on it and then paying it off at the end of the month, or leaving a small balance to where you can manage it. If you get in a pinch, you can pay it off. That way you build up your credit slowly but surely, so by the time you're ready to purchase a home or make any other valuable purchase, your credit score is already built. You do need credit, let me say that. I know sometimes people want to be cash based, but there's a limitation to that. One of the things that we have in banking is you always have access to credit, but you have a limited opportunity to gain cash. And typically what happens is people spend up all their cash and then they go to credit. And it should be the opposite way around. So be sure to look at those things and look at the terms. And everything in credit is negotiable. You can negotiate your interest rate. You can negotiate your payment schedule. You can actually negotiate the payment. They just want to be repaid. And do not ignore it. If they send you a letter, call them. The last thing you can do is ignore it and then get yourself in more. That's compounding the bad decision.
I don't really have much to add to what Ralph said. I mean, everything, it is important. I was fortunate to be able to have a credit card in college that was really linked to my parents. So, it did teach me those, I guess, to be restrictive and to be responsible. And also I had, my parents to fall back on. And learned it the hard way, did run up the credit card at Walmart, and learned a very hard lesson of why it's important to always make sure that what you spend on that credit card, you have to pay. And so, my parents were always really creative at, I guess, teaching me a lesson. And so that Christmas that I, came home from school, I had to get a job that I did not like, that was the worst job I possibly could ever have. And I worked at the petite section in Belk. And that was my punishment. And I worked there until I paid off all of the credit card that I had run up. So, so fortunately, I, was just in debt to my parents and not to the actual debt collector or credit card. But that was definitely a life lesson. I was fortunate to be able to just have that punishment, I guess, from my parents.
Look, don't get caught in a Target or a Walmart with a credit card, okay? That adds up faster than you can blink.
I'm sitting over here laughing because I remember those days. I was so fly for homecoming, but was so broke the next day. Like, you got to pick and choose.
Yeah, I've been there, done that. I mean, but this is so important, right? We're joking about how good we looked at homecoming, the shoes we bought, all the mistakes that we made in sort of running up those credit cards. But without having a good credit score, you can be blocked from so many of the great things that you want in your life, whether it be a car, a home, taking out a loan to start your business, wanting to be an entrepreneur. Like, your credit score goes with you. So I'd love for you guys to sort of give our audience a little bit of understanding on how long a bad credit score can stay on your credit history and what are the steps that you can do to remove it.
I'll just come back to the banker. So there are 3 different tiers of credit, good, bad, and terrible. So typically your credit score, your fair credit is usually around, I would say 620 to about 650. Good credit is usually about 650 to 700, and then above average is 700 and above. One thing that we didn't add in that with the credit score was debt to income. We can still have a great credit score, but if your debt still doesn't match your income, you'll still get declined. So those are all things that you need to consider when you're talking about credit and credit scores. How you manage that is simply by making the payment. One of the things that I said earlier was everything in credit is negotiable. So you don't want to necessarily ignore the payment, but you want to pay something to it. So I know sometimes when you're talking about like hospital bills and student loans and everything else, if you call your creditor, they'll work out a payment plan that'll benefit them, but you can still work in it. When we talk about like the different tiers of credit and how it can affect you long term, obviously bad credit means that you will have a lack of access to your home, to cars, whatever major purchase that you want to do in the future. When you talk about good credit, it lasts forever. And one other rule of thumb, don't ever co-sign for anybody for anything.
Say that again.
Yep, yes. Sorry, underscore, bold, italicized.
One of the largest mistakes that I see young people make is co-signing for friends, relatives on major purchases that they have no intention of paying back. Or they have the intention to pay it back initially, but then stop, and then you're stuck holding the bag. So let me say it again. Don't co-sign for anybody for anything that is not your spouse. And even then, still ask them when you're gonna pay me back. So, when you talk about that, the last thing you wanna do is co-sign for somebody, they ruin your credit and you're having to fix it while they go on and live their life. It's gonna be an awkward homecoming seeing your friend that ruined your credit, trust me.
I mean, yeah. You also mentioned student loans in there too, and I know that's a big deal obviously here at JSU for anyone watching in academics. I know we've got students that are moving on to grad school as well after this. I mean, being educated is massively important in today's society. But Misty, I'd love if you could sort of give us the landscape on what are the differences among student loans, and are they all worth taking? Because there's so many options and you see the dollar signs and you really want to go for it, but a little bit of clarity would be really helpful.
Right, yes. And so the main two types of student loans are subsidized and unsubsidized. What does that mean? So subsidized are loans in which when you take out that loan, you are not accruing interest until the time that you graduate, or a lot of times you have a grace period after graduation. Unsubsidized loans, as soon as you take that loan out, it begins to accrue interest over the time that you are in school. And then once you graduate again, then you will have all of this interest that has accumulated and accrued versus a subsidized in which you won't start accruing interest until after graduation. And so, really looking at, those two differences can be a huge difference as far as what you will owe when you graduate. And so just one thing about student loans in general, I would encourage students to look at all resources and make student loans the absolutely last thing that you utilize in order to pay for your tuition and your college expenses. I would say apply for as many scholarships as you can, even if it says that you think that you're not, you don't qualify for it, or I'm not this or I'm not that. It's kind of like a job. You apply for jobs that even if it's like, well, I don't have that one quality. It doesn't matter, apply for it, because same thing with student loans. That's kind of how I can compare those, or not student loans, but I'm sorry, scholarships. There are so many resources out there, and a lot of times there's too many, and it can become very overwhelming. But there are so many scholarships that are out there that are really untapped, and some of them even you may be the only applicant. So maybe you didn't really pass those particular variables that they were looking for, but you were the only applicant. So then they award you the scholarship. So I really encourage all students to try to exhaust all other forms of paying for your college education prior to reaching out and getting those student loans. And then when you do, just take what you really need. And it's so easy to want that refund to be able to do this or that with. And if you do get a refund, I would encourage you invest that in put that in a savings account. Don't go and spend it like it's Christmas. And that's really difficult to do, because it is it's exciting to get your refund check, and you have money to buy your homecoming outfit or whatever that may be. But yes, really research what's out there and try to avoid, if you can, being in debt when you graduate.
Yeah, I really want to stress that point. My family was very on top of me when I was applying for college, because the amount of scholarships and the money that sits out there that is untouched, the money is there. It's just a matter of doing the research and putting the time in to write the essays, fill out the paperwork, because like she said, there may be no applicants and you may just waltz right into an opportunity that will help you get to where you want to go next. So doing the research is key. But I know that once we get out of college, now we've got student debt. So what would be the best way to approach student debt in your postgraduate life?
I would the debtor, they want you to pay your loan. They want you to pay it. They want you to pay it off. So talk to them, just like Ralph alluded to earlier. Call your loan providers and tell them, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I can pay each month, and more. They will work with you, and so to where you can, actually be able to live at the same time you're paying your loans off. That is possible. And so don't be afraid to ask for, for help from, the lender. And then really there's, different payback plans that you can also negotiate. If, there's grace periods that you can negotiate as well, like time to get on your feet from when you start your first job. And so again, it's just really important to reach out, be proactive, and to be able to negotiate your payment to where it fits your lifestyle at that point in time. And then, once you start paying on it, you see that, you're making more money at your job, start putting a little bit more than what your payment is. And then finally, sometimes you just get mad at it and you're just ready to get rid of it. You're tired of seeing that, that statement come in every month, and you just start throwing money at it as you can. And so I think that's, really a good approach to paying off your loans, and, really should be the priority when you get out of school. However, you also, pay your mortgage, pay or your rent, or, the needs that you have, but then that should be the next thing.
I would also add, don't wait on Joe Biden. I think we all tapped in and looked at. I know I went in, submitted the forgiveness, and checked my Sally Mae, and nothing changed. So let's not wait on Joe. But there are also other options as well. They do have income-based repayment plans where they adjust based upon where you are income-wise. There are also options based upon careers. So if we have any educators, like resources like Teach for America, if you're willing to go teach in some of our urban or rural areas for at least a year, they'll actually repay your entire student loan balance back. For pharmacists, doctors, those plan on going to medical school or dental school or wherever, if you're willing to go to some of our urban or rural areas for a certain time frame, and especially the doctors who come out with almost $300,000 average student loan balances, they're willing to pay you back. Those are just a couple of careers. In the financial world, I know Trust Market, if you're willing to go into some of our urban or rural areas and work in some of our local locations, they're willing to pay back a certain percentage of your student loan balances. So there are options available to you for repayment. You just have to be able to find them, research them, and negotiate with your creditor in order to get them done.
And those benefits also extended to the tech space too. A lot of tech companies also offer student loan repayment as part of their benefit package.
Yeah.
So now that we've covered the student debt and sort of that next step once you're out of college, I'm curious, Donald, I'm actually going to start with you. What would you say are the most common financial pitfalls that we see for young people starting right into the workplace out of college, and what are some tools that you think can help them avoid or get themselves out of these pitfalls?
I would say maybe the easiest one for me to drop is just ready to ball, right? You spend so much time, in school, studying, sacrificing, that once you get that freedom, start making your own money, you want to do things that make you feel good. Internally, a lot of the conversations that I have with my team and also family members, it's kind of crazy how life works, that some of the most important decisions we make in our lives happened when we're in our teenage years and early 20s, which is why you see so many people get to my age and beyond, look back and, man, if I could just undo this one thing. So really taking that time of your life serious and realize that if you set things up well in college and sometimes even before, it makes your life so much easier financially, later on down the road. So being able to, one, you graduate from college, and my generation was a little bit different. Like, we couldn't wait to get out of mom and dad's house. So as broke as we were, we all had apartments, we all had hoopties, right? And we were happy and broke because we were broke together, right? But I feel the Gen Z community and the demographic that I've seen, y'all are a lot better about your money. Most of you all statistically have already started investing. You save more money than we have at your age as well. So you all are a lot more money conscious. about building wealth. So for me, it is making sure that you set up that life plan. Really think 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead. That's probably the best advice I've ever received from a mentor. Donald, what would the you 5 years from now and 10 years from now say to you now? And you have to realize that the decisions that you make today can impact the 25-year-old life you want to live, the 30-year-old life you want to live. And it takes discipline, right? But the same discipline that you show to study for really hard classes and tests to get into college, you've already proven that you have the discipline that's needed to get to those levels of success. You can do the same thing with managing your finances. You just have to choose to do it. And I feel another way to kind of help that happen is make sure that you surround yourself with people who are like-minded. If you were friends with me in my 20s, I probably wasn't a very good friend because I was also trying to get you to spend as much money as I was spending, even though we broke the next week, right? So make sure you surround yourself with people that are like-minded because it makes it easier, for you to be able to scale. Don't go out, and immediately try to buy that car, that you saw that you wanted, even if you make enough money to do it. Like, be mindful of what that means for you later. If you want to buy a house, well, and we can talk about that a little bit too. It's hard to do that nowadays. My mom and dad's generation, they were able to afford a home in their early 20s on a pretty, small income at that time, versus now you can make six figures and it's tough to buy a house. So if that is something that you have in your future, then you're gonna have to start thinking 5-10 years ahead of money you need to start putting away for that. If you also are like me and you like to travel, because you didn't travel a lot when you were younger growing up in the South, you have to think about that too. You can do the things you want to do, you can have fun, but as we mentioned earlier, make it a part of a budget and hold yourself accountable to it.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask one question before we hop into the Q&A. I'd love if you guys could quickly share your biggest financial mistake. I know it's a big question, and I know we're headed to Q&A, but I got to get it out.
I was going to let Mrs. Spender go, but I guess I'll go first. The biggest financial mistake that I made was probably ignoring my student loans when I graduated. So I wasn't talking, I'm talking from personal experience. When I graduated, I think they give you 6 months before you go into repayment. I acted like them letters didn't even come to my parents' house. So what ended up happening was they were about to add a delinquency on my credit report. And at the time, I had just got my first banking job and I was trying to buy a car. And I was calling my student loan company in a frenzy, begging them not to put a delinquency on there so I could buy a car. That's probably the biggest mistake that ultimately, when I was trying to purchase my house, they brought that up. So take care of your student loans, people.
Buying my Bowflex Tri Climber.
Wow.
No, really, but no, just buying something that you don't need, and but it sounds great, and your friend has one, and so you want to live and do the same things, and that goes back to when you graduate and you have your first job. You're working with people who have been in the workplace for a very long time, and they have these nice things that you want. They wear the nice clothes that you want, and it's really challenging to not want to buy those things, and you want to fit in. You want to be where they are. Well, that's you can't have that at that point in time, and so yes, just buying things that are frivolous, that don't necessarily contribute to anything good. And so that I will say I've purchased some frivolous things that were expensive, and I wish I would not have.
I got so many mistakes. Let's see. I'll say a few. The first one is, should not have moved out of mom and dad's house as fast. Like, that was a luxury. I could have stuck around for at least another year, stacked, and then made the move. I also highly recommend to not get cars with 28% interest. Not fun. As soon as you drive it off the lot, you lose a lot of value and you get stuck with it. I also, as you all heard me mention earlier, was guilty of running it up hella fast. on my first credit card in college. Again, I was fly for homecoming, but had to pay that minimum payment for a number of years until I was able to get that thing paid off. And let me tell you, they got a lot more than $500 by the time I was done with it. And again, those are simple things that I feel so many folks from my generation, we all have the same story pretty much, right? And that's something I really hope that Gen Z doesn't repeat.
Beautiful. So I'll open it up to Q&A. Do we have any questions from the audience? Don't be shy.
I do have a question. How important is it to set up a retirement? How important is it to set up a retirement plan coming out of college, and what does that look like?
Okay, retirement plans coming out of college.
I would say very. One of the best things that I did was, with my first job, was set up a retirement plan. There's never too early a time to start or creating a goal of when you want to retire. Typically, I think when I first started in banking, they were just getting rid of pensions. So we didn't have access to guaranteed life income. Everything now is self-directed. So you're either going to have a 401k or a 403b if you're a nonprofit. So being able to educate yourself, to be disciplined enough to divert enough of your income to where it'll have a lasting impact throughout your career. One of the biggest mistakes that I see just with coworkers is the reason why so many people are still working now is because they didn't save enough when they were young. I'm not gonna call this the financial institution, but one of the things that they did was they refunded their pension. So all of a sudden, a lot of the employees got hundreds of thousands of dollars in a check that was meant for their retirement that they ended up spending. And then a couple of years later, when the market went down, as we've seen over the past few years, now all of a sudden they are going to be working for an extended period of time or way past when they expect. Number two, I don't expect to see Social Security when I retire. That was a program tool that was created during the Great Depression. Obviously, we've heard the politics around it. For my generation, we're 50-50. Your generation is probably 10-90, that you'll actually see a Social Security benefit. And then lastly is investing now will only help you in the future. If you can create the tools now, if you can create the strong financial habits now, it only makes it that much better. And the last thing is, when you're saving, be sure to save enough for what your life expectancy is. One of the saddest things that I see is people who retire, but end up realizing that they haven't saved enough, end up coming back into the workforce. And not where they were, they're having to take lower jobs. And that is one of the saddest things to see. So it is vital that you start now. If you can divert 3%, like one of the things that most companies do is they do a cost of living adjustment every year, whether it's 2% or whether it's 5%. Typically, if you can start off with 3% at 21, 22 years old, and I think for 401ks, you can divert up almost up to 50% of your income. So if you start off with 3% and then each year you add 1% every year until you retire, by the time you retire, you'll be a millionaire, and you won't have anything to worry about.
I love that. There's a fire community. Question?
Yes, I would like to know if you are graduating from college or either making a change somewhere in your career, how do you know it's the right time to become an entrepreneur?
Great question.
Yeah, entrepreneurship is one of the most liberating things that a person can do, but it also comes with a significant number of conditions, right? What I recommend to a lot of people is that that's not something that you have to do exclusively either, right? So a lot of the best entrepreneurs and the best companies that you all have come to know and love started off as side hustles. So a lot of people will work their 9 to 5 and then work their side hustle in the after hours until they don't need to work the 9 to 5 anymore. So there's never a time that I feel not to think about that. fact, the Gen Z community also, of all the demographics in the US, they have all the side hustlers, right? I think something crazy like 67% of Gen Z has a side hustle right now. And I think that's something that our community should take seriously. The bulk of the job growth in our country comes from regular folks, that take it upon themselves to do something new, and I also feel, even what I'm building with Kinley, that the solutions that communities like ours need will need to be built by us. No one else is going to do it for us. So I always encourage folks to really kind of take that leap, and if it's something that you're interested in looking into, there are so many resources. But very similarly to what we were mentioning earlier about finances, find people that are doing what you want to do, and have those conversations, make those people your mentors. I advise a lot of budding entrepreneurs all the time. If you have the opportunity to go and get an internship, at a Google, at a Meta, at a large company, go there, because what those companies also help you learn processes. Companies that I started, when I was younger, I learned by, the hard knocks way, right? Making all the mistakes and figuring out what not to do. But entrepreneurship is a path to financial freedom. It is tough. It is not easy, but there are steps that you can take to make that process much easier, and it's always a good time to look into it, in my opinion.
I would add one thing to that. I wouldn't jump until your passion meets your purpose. I think a lot of times when we see young budding entrepreneurs start, their passion and their purpose haven't met. One of the things that you hear when you hear him talk about his company, when he talks about his employees, you hear the passion when he speaks about it. And he's talked about earlier that this was his purpose because he wanted to financially educate young African Americans, Generation Z. You heard him say that multiple times. One of the things that I think that a lot of times why we see so many budding businesses fail is, one, they're either not passionate about it enough to stick through it, to stick through the process, through all the lean, through all the processes and everything else. And then two, it's not their purpose. That's not what they're meant to do. So make sure that your passion meets your purpose when you're getting in your entrepreneurship.
Quickly to double tap on that, thank you you just reminded me of something I think is really important too. Because I think it's really important for people to hear this. The entrepreneur that I am today is because of the Donald years ago that failed many times, many times. And I feel that's an important part of the process too. Typically, the Black community especially, we're afraid to take that leap because we don't want to fail, right? To be an entrepreneur is to fail, but it's not something that you have to look at it from that lens. You can look at it as learning lessons. So I can think of the first company that I started was a win. I was lucky. I got it started at the right time, was able to sell and exit that company. Started several companies after that fell flat on the floor, but I was able to learn from those processes too. So that's one of my big lessons as well. Just you got to get out there, you got to get it started, and sometimes you'll find yourself into what your passion is. Because right now, what is that? Right? Like, what are you passionate about? And a passion might not even be a company that is for profit, right? It could simply be something that you just want to do to help people as well. But you got to get in the game, start something, fail fast, right? So that you can iterate and then get to what you need to build to.
Well, I know we are at time. I see I've got one more question in the crowd, so afterwards, I definitely want to give you the space to get your question. But I do just want to quickly thank you guys, because this has been a really rewarding conversation, and I think it really helps us take the steps that we need to break these generational cycles and fill in that wealth gap that we see between our community and the rest of the world. And so this has been extremely meaningful, and I hope that we've covered topics that are important to everyone, from student loans to becoming an entrepreneur to credit scores and really running the gambit. So I know we're gonna stay after a little while to answer a few more questions, but I wanna just thank you all for joining us today for this very important conversation. We hope everyone found it useful and that you'll take advantage of the resources available to you on the JSU campus, as well as resources available in your respective campuses for everyone who's tuning in. Students can also access the recorded session on the JSU website. It'll be under the Academic Affairs section, along with resources and a questionnaire if you care to share your feedback. There will be printed questionnaires also available here today for everyone in the room. And I want to say a big, big thank you to today's panelists for sharing their thoughts, their wisdom with us on this incredibly important subject. And our next session will be in February, so stay tuned for details. And lastly, one quick thank you to everyone who put this series together, all the hard work, Dr. Newkirk Turner, Dr. Campbell, and Mr. Silver, as well as the 160/90 team and the SMAC Entertainment team. So please give everyone a round of applause. Thank you all again. And I think we're off live, but I want to hit you with this question. So